1,000 years had passed since the asteroid that nearly destroyed Earth. Humanity had grown beyond its home planet, stretching across hundreds of star systems. Ships traveled between worlds as easily as trains once traveled across continents. Science, art, and culture flourished. Yet throughout this vast civilization, one truth remained sacred. Humanity remembered who had once saved them. The Zalethi Dominion, once a distant, silent empire, now thrived again, rebuilt by humans' steady hands and unwavering hearts. Humanity had not merely rebuilt structures or restored technology, they had restored hope. They had shown that civilization was not measured by weapons or fleets, but by compassion, loyalty, and courage. A galaxy transformed, the galaxy had taken notice. Once skeptical or indifferent civilizations began to reconsider the meaning of power and responsibility. At the United Galactic Council, representatives from hundreds of species debated the rise of humanity. Some feared the humans' growing influence, unsure why a species would invest so heavily in others, yet none could deny the results. Planets that had been dying for centuries were now thriving. Systems that had fallen silent hummed with life. A young Zalethi diplomat, Virael, addressed the council. Humans have taught us that strength is not in domination. It is in action guided by principle. They act because it is right, not because they are rewarded, the council murmured. Many had never seen a civilization wield power through compassion rather than fear. Humanity had changed the rules of engagement without firing a single weapon. The Monument of Gratitude. On the central Zalethi world, a new monument rose. Twin hands, one human and one Zalethi, intertwined and reaching toward the stars. It was taller than any building, shining with crystal light visible from orbit. Thousands gathered for the dedication ceremony. Children laughed and played in the plaza, humans and Zalethi alike, while elders stood silently, their eyes full of memory and emotion. President Amira Kellen, now a legend across human worlds, spoke first. Her voice carried across the plaza. 1,000 years ago, the Zalethi saved a single world. Humanity remembers that act. Today, we honor it not with words, but with deeds, across countless worlds, with countless lives. Elder Viren, standing beside her, added softly, "Once, we offered aid. We could not have imagined it would ripple across the stars. Humanity has returned the gift in ways that surpass our understanding. You have rewritten what it means to be noble." The crowd erupted in applause, but the moment was quiet, reverent. They understood that this was not only a celebration, it was a reminder that kindness, when returned, could echo through eternity. A continuing mission. Humanity did not stop at rebuilding the Zalethi Dominion. Inspired by their own history, humans extended aid to other civilizations in need. Worlds devastated by natural disasters or long conflicts received human engineers, doctors, and teachers. Humans shared their technologies and philosophies, helping planets to rebuild not just physically, but socially and culturally. A fleet known as the Humanitarian Vanguard became a symbol of hope. They carried no weapons of war, only supplies, knowledge, and encouragement. Wherever they went, lives were restored. Communities grew stronger. Civilizations learned that help could come without hidden motives. Teaching the next generation on Earth, children learned the story of the Zalethi and the human response in schools, theaters, and homes. History books spoke not only of wars and discoveries, but of courage, gratitude, and action. Young explorers trained aboard starships, learning both science and empathy. They were taught that the galaxy was not a place to conquer, but a place to serve, learn, and protect. Captain Elias Ward, now an elder himself, visited many academies. He would tell students, "Remember, your strength is measured not by what you can take, but by what you choose to give." Humanity once received help when we were helpless. We remembered. That memory shaped who we became. Let it shape who you become as well. The students listened with rapt attention. They understood that courage and morality could travel across the stars as easily as ships did. The Zalethi rebirth. The Zalethi, Once a fading civilization, now thrived alongside humanity. Their cities sparkled with innovation, blending human and Zalathi architecture. Schools taught combined sciences. Festivals celebrated both species' histories. Music flowed from streets and towers, blending human instruments with Zalathi crystal tones. Yet they never forgot what had saved them. Every year on the anniversary of humanity's arrival to restore the Dominion, the Zalathi celebrated a festival of remembrance. They honored the humans who had chosen action over inaction, courage over fear. Elder Viren, now extremely old but still dignified, would address the crowds. "You have shown us that kindness is the true path to greatness. Humanity reminds us that even in despair, hope can rise when hearts act together." Inspiring the galaxy stories of human compassion spread beyond the Zalathi and human worlds. Civilizations that had once thought of humanity as simple, fragile, or weak now saw a species capable of changing the galaxy without weapons, without domination, without force. Several species joined in humanitarian missions of their own, inspired by the humans' example. Trade and cultural exchange flourished. The galaxy became more connected, more cooperative, more hopeful. The humans did not seek credit or reward. Their goal was simple: repay kindness and inspire others to act with the same principle. This quiet revolution changed the galaxy permanently. Strength was now measured by the capacity to help, the courage to act, and the wisdom to remember kindness. The final message on. A calm evening aboard the Aurora, which had been preserved as a historical vessel, Captain Ward recorded a message for future generations. Once the Zalathi reached out to save Earth, he said. They did not expect payment. They did not ask for praise. They acted because it was the right thing. Humanity remembers that. We acted in return, not for fame, not for power, but because we understood what it meant to be alive and responsible. Let all who hear this remember, kindness is stronger than fear. Gratitude is more powerful than anger. A single act of compassion can echo across 1,000 worlds. And if humanity could do it, so can you. His voice ended, but the message continued to inspire for generations. 1,000 years of gratitude. Centuries later, humans and Zalathi still worked side by side. Monuments of intertwined hands stood on every major planet. Schools taught lessons of morality, empathy, and courage. Ships carried aid to every corner of the galaxy where life needed support. Civilizations had learned that the galaxy was not a place for dominance but for stewardship. The principles humanity had lived by, remembering kindness, acting without expecting reward, valuing life, became a model for millions of species. In every corner of the galaxy, the story was told. Once they offered aid. Humanity remembered. And in returning that aid, they changed everything forever. The final reflection, on a hill overlooking the central Zalathi world, Captain Ward and Elder Viren watched children play under twin suns. Humans and Zalathi laughed together, sharing stories, games, and songs. "You have given more than life," Viren said quietly. "You have given hope, guidance, and a future." Ward smiled, watching the young faces. "You once saved us when we were helpless." Humanity remembered. That memory shaped our choices, our courage, our hearts, and now it shapes the galaxy. The stars above shimmered with possibilities, and in every human heart, one truth remained. Kindness, gratitude, and courage are the strongest forces in the universe. Humanity had shown that not through weapons or fear, but through action, compassion, and loyalty. Their legacy was written not only on monuments and histories, but across the stars themselves. The galaxy was alive with hope, music, and the echo of deeds done purely because they were right. And humanity's story, the story of a species that repaid kindness in ways that reshaped worlds, would never be forgotten. The Valoran system had always been known for its beauty. 5 peaceful worlds circled a brilliant golden sun, surrounded by silver rings of ice and dust. For thousands of years, the Valoran people lived in calm harmony, studying art, growing gardens and orbiting cities, and believing that the universe itself smiled upon them. But one day that light began to fade. The sun of Valora started to die. It began as small flickers on energy readings. The local observatory saw sudden changes in solar radiation, bursts stronger than anything recorded in 1,000,000 years. The light grew unstable, and soon every planet felt the tremors. Within months, heat waves swept across the worlds, and gravity sensors showed the sun was collapsing in on itself. The Valorans panicked. They reached out to the Galactic Union, a vast collection of species that worked together for peace and progress. Dozens of alien races responded with concern, but when they examined the data, their faces turned pale, or whatever color fear gave them. The numbers were clear. The Valoran sun would collapse in less than 30 galactic days. Nothing could stop it. Evacuation was the only option. Meetings filled the halls of the Union Council on Arctis Prime. Long tables stretched under bright lights as representatives argued in a dozen languages. Some shouted for evacuation fleets, others debated where the Valorans could go, but all agreed on one thing: saving the system was impossible. And then the humans spoke. They sat quietly at the far end of the table until everyone else had finished. Their leader, Captain Alyssa Grant, stood up. She wasn't tall or loud, but her voice carried across the hall with calm strength. "We've studied the readings," she said. "We believe we can stabilize the star." For a moment there was silence. Then laughter, soft at first, then spreading like a wave. The Treen, a crystalline species known for logic, tilted his glowing head. "Captain Grant, you cannot stabilize a star that is already dying. It is beyond reason." Grant didn't flinch. "Maybe," she said, "but we've handled worse." The phrase, "we can handle it," became the quiet echo in the chamber. Some rolled their eyes, others whispered in disbelief. The humans, they thought, were brave but foolish. Still, the Union agreed to let them try. After all, the Valorans had no other hope. Within days, massive human ships entered the Valoran system. The vessels were painted in white and silver, their hulls shining with the blue glow of fusion engines. Each ship carried colossal machinery: fusion anchors, plasma converters, and magnetic field stabilizers. The plan was daring: to inject massive amounts of energy into the star's unstable core and rebalance its gravitational collapse. The operation's main base was set on Valora III, a once lush world now covered in ash and storms. From orbit, humans began assembling structures taller than mountains, solar harness towers designed to channel energy directly into the star. To the Valorans, it looked like madness. Ambassador Tissaran, their wise and gentle leader, visited the human base. His long, translucent form glowed faintly under the artificial light. "You should not waste your effort," he said to Captain Grant. "No one can command a star. Even our ancestors could not." Grant looked up from a holographic projection of the system. Her eyes were tired but determined. "Maybe you're right," she said. "But we won't know until we try. And we're not the kind to give up before the fight starts." Tissaran watched her in silence, sensing something in her that he didn't fully understand. A mix of stubbornness and hope that defied logic. "Why?" he finally asked. "Why risk your people for worlds that are not yours?" Grant smiled. "Because if it were Earth's sun dying, I'd want someone out there to try for us too." The first week was chaos. Magnetic storms flared around the star, sending waves of energy through the solar system. The humans' machines struggled to stay online. Robots melted under radiation bursts, and engineers worked around the clock to rebuild. Each day seemed worse than the last, but no one quit. On the orbiting station Resolute, Commander David Ruiz, Grant's second-in-command, reported grim numbers. "We've lost 2 stabilizers and half our energy collectors," he said. "At this rate, we won't finish in time." Grant leaned over the console. "Then we'll work faster." Ruiz gave her a tired grin. "That's your answer to everything." "It's worked so far," she replied, half joking, but her voice carried steel underneath. From across the galaxy, Union observers sent their reports back home. They wrote of human ships working in impossible conditions, of pilots flying straight into plasma fields, and of engineers risking their lives to place stabilizers near the star's corona. One report simply said, "They refused to stop." The Valorans watched in awe from orbit. What once seemed like hopeless madness now looked like courage beyond comprehension. One young Valoran technician named Lyra stood on a viewing deck, watching the human ships burn bright against the collapsing sun. "They know they can die out there," she whispered. "Why do they keep going?" Her superior answered quietly, "Because they are human." They believe there's always a way. As the days passed, progress began to show. The energy fluctuations of the sun slowed slightly. The readings stabilized for the first time since the crisis began. The impossible had become possible. When the first stable reading came through, the human command deck erupted with cheers. Ruiz clapped his hands together and shouted, "We did it!" "We actually did it." Grant smiled but didn't celebrate yet. "It's a start," she said. "We still have a long way to go." Outside the station, thousands of kilometers away, a human pilot named Lieutenant Mara Chen guided her small craft through deadly plasma storms to deliver a replacement part to a damaged stabilizer. Her ship shook violently as flames licked across its hull. "Chen to command, visual range of Anchor 3, she said through the comm. "Radiation's intense, but I can make it," Ruiz's voice crackled in reply. "Get out of there. The storm's too strong." Chen's voice came steady. "If I turn back, the stabilizer fails. And if it fails, everything fails." She pushed forward. Moments later, her ship vanished behind a flash of light. When the scanners cleared, the stabilizer's systems came online, perfectly aligned. Grant bowed her head. "She did it," she whispered. "She saved the array." And for a quiet moment, every human on the Resolute stood in silence, not in sadness, but in respect. Because sacrifice to them was not defeat. It was part of doing what must be done. Meanwhile, on the Valoran homeworld, people gathered in the temples to watch the skies. Their priests sang old songs of light and renewal, praying to the stars to give strength to their strange, fearless allies. Even those who had doubted began to hope. Ambassador Tissaran stood before the Council of Elders, speaking softly. "Humans are strange creatures," he said. "They face death as if it were another puzzle to solve. They fight not only for themselves, but for others. Perhaps that is what makes them so dangerous and so beautiful." Back on the human command deck, Grant looked out at the glowing sun, now calmer than before. "We're holding it together," she said quietly. "Maybe we really can handle it," Ruiz chuckled. "You know everyone's repeating that phrase now? We can handle it. The Valorans, the Union, everyone." Grant smiled faintly. "Good, let them. Maybe it'll remind them that giving up isn't the only option." As she turned to leave the control deck, she glanced at a photo taped beside the console. An image of Earth, blue and bright. "Let's make sure we earn those words," she whispered. Outside, the dying star shimmered once more, but for the first time its light did not fade. It burned steady, golden, as if listening to the will of a small, stubborn species that refused to surrender. And far away in the hearts of every watching world, a single thought began to spread. If humans say they can handle it, maybe they really can. For a brief moment, the Valoran sun looked calm. Its golden light returned softer and steadier than before. People across the system celebrated, believing the danger was finally passing. But deep inside the star, unstable energy still moved like restless fire. It was not over. On the human flagship ISS Resolute, Captain Alyssa Grant stood beside the main viewport watching the shining sphere in silence. Her uniform was scorched in several places, her hands covered in faint burns, but her eyes were sharp as ever. She knew this piece was only the beginning of a harder fight. Commander David Ruiz entered, holding a tablet full of data. "The readings are still unstable," he said. "The core is slowing its collapse, but the pressure waves are building. We might have stopped it for now, but not for long." Grant nodded. "We'll keep working. We have to finish what we started." Doubts from the Council, while humans worked. The Galactic Union Council gathered again on Arctis Prime. Dozens of holographic figures filled the great circular chamber, representatives from every corner of known space. The news that humans had slowed a dying star had spread like lightning. Some called it a miracle. Others called it impossible. Ambassador Tissaran of Valora appeared in the chamber, glowing faintly. His voice was calm but filled with hope. "The humans have achieved what none of us believed possible. They have given our worlds more time." But the Trine, a crystalline being of perfect reason, spoke sharply. "Time, yes, but they cannot sustain this operation. The star will eventually consume itself. Logic shows there is no permanent solution." Another alien, a winged species from Kira, added, "They are reckless. The radiation will destroy their fleet. Even if they succeed, the cost is too high. Only the Valorans and a few smaller species defended the humans." Tissaran looked around the chamber. They fight for life, not only for ours, but for all of us. Should that not inspire hope? The Treen replied coldly. Hope is not a plan. The human plan back in the Valoran system, Grant gathered her officers in the main briefing room. A glowing map of the sun hovered above the table, showing streams of energy moving like fire rivers. We've slowed the collapse, she said, pointing at the center of the map, but the core is still unstable. We'll need to install the fusion anchors inside the corona itself. That means flying closer to the surface than any ship has ever gone. Lieutenant Mara Chen's sacrifice had already reminded everyone how dangerous it was. Even so, no one spoke against the plan. Ruiz frowned. That close, the hull will melt in minutes. We'll lose half the fleet. Grant looked around the room. I know the risks. But if we don't stabilize the core, this star will collapse and destroy everything in the system. We didn't come here to back down now. The room fell silent for a long moment before the crew nodded one by one. They had already accepted that their mission was bigger than themselves. The observers across the galaxy, news networks and public channels broadcasted the human operation. Billions watched the small fleet orbiting a massive burning sun. Commentators from every world debated endlessly. On Valora Prime, Lyra, the young technician, stayed awake every night to watch the live feeds. Her friends gathered beside her in the viewing hall. They watched human engineers working in suits of silver armor, welding giant plates under a storm of radiation. The humans seemed to fight the sun itself, and somehow, they kept winning small battles. Lyra whispered to her friend. They don't even look afraid, her friend replied softly. Maybe fear works differently for them. Meanwhile, in distant systems, other races began to question their old beliefs. For ages, most had accepted that nature's power could never be challenged. But now a small species from a quiet blue planet was rewriting the laws of what could be done. Closer to the fire 3 days later, the new operation began. The fusion anchors, machines the size of mountains, were launched toward the sun's surface. Each anchor carried deep stabilizing rods designed to release controlled fusion waves into the core. Commander Ruiz led the mission personally. His ship, Valiant, moved closest to the burning surface. The heat shields glowed white. Inside the cockpit, warning lights flashed constantly. Anchor 1 deployed, Ruiz reported. His voice was steady, though sweat rolled down his face. Temperature is rising fast. Radiation shields at 90%. On the Resolute, Grant watched every move on her screen. Stay focused, David. Once you deploy all 3 anchors, pull back immediately. Ruiz smiled through the comm. Copy that. We can handle it. Grant couldn't help but smile too. The phrase had become a symbol of hope among the crew. But suddenly alarms screamed across the Resolute. One of the stabilizer towers in orbit began to overload. The structure's energy readings shot through the roof. Anchor 2 is destabilizing, shouted a technician. If it fails, it will trigger a chain reaction. Grant turned to the communications officer. Send a recall order now. Before the command could go through, Ruiz's voice came through the radio. Captain, if we pull back now, the whole array collapses. I'm staying. Grant's heart tightened. David, that's an order. Silence filled the comm. Then Ruiz said quietly, You told us never to stop halfway. I'm not stopping now. The screen flashed with light as his ship moved closer to the burning anchor. He rerouted his reactor power directly into the stabilizer, forcing it back into balance. The readings began to normalize, but the Valiant's energy levels dropped rapidly. Moments later, the communication line went silent. Grant stood frozen for several seconds, staring at the blank screen. The bridge was silent. Then she whispered, He saved us all. A shift in the star's hours later, the star's surface began to stabilize. The violent eruption slowed, and the radiation field thinned. For the first time since the crisis began, the Valoran sun shone with steady light. Every human ship that survived began to pull back to safer orbit. On Valora Prime, the people cheered. Bells rang in the cities and families embraced. Even the most logical species across the galaxy could no longer deny what they saw. Against every prediction, humans had turned the tide. In the Union Council chamber, the Treen scientist spoke again, his tone quieter this time. Perhaps our calculations underestimated them. Ambassador Tissarin smiled faintly. You did not underestimate them. You simply forgot that courage cannot be measured. After the storm inside the Resolute, the crew worked in silence, patching damage, counting survivors. More than half the fleet was lost, but their mission continued. Captain Grant stood at the window once more, looking at the star's golden light. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes remained steady. She thought of Ruiz and the others who had given their lives. They had not died for glory. They had done it because someone had to. A voice broke her thoughts. "Captain, the Valoran Council is requesting a transmission." Grant nodded and stepped to the console. The hologram of Ambassador Tisserand appeared, his glowing form flickering gently. "You have done what we thought no one could," he said. "You have given us hope and time. You have reminded us what it means to fight for life." Grant smiled softly. "We're not done yet, Ambassador. The star is stable but not safe. We'll keep working until it holds on its own." Tisserand bowed his head. "Then the Velerans stand with you. You will not face this fire alone." For the first time, human and Veleran ships began working side by side. Together they built new stabilizers and shared technology. What started as one species mission had now become a union of two. The galaxy watches in the following days. Recordings of human bravery spread everywhere. Children on distant planets wore patches with the words, "We can handle it." Scientists began studying human engineering methods, trying to understand how such a small species achieved what the greatest minds thought impossible. For many alien civilizations, this event changed everything. It proved that the limits they had always accepted were not real barriers, only fears waiting to be overcome. On Valora Prime, Lyra looked up at the night sky. The sun, once a fading light, now glowed bright and alive. She whispered softly, "They really did handle it." Her father, standing beside her, nodded. "Yes, and because of them, we still have tomorrow." The promise back aboard the Resolute, Captain Grant recorded her final report of the week. Operation Sunshield continues. Core stability improving by 16%. We've lost many good people, but their efforts have saved millions. Humanity came here as strangers. We leave as friends. She paused before ending the message, then added, "If anyone ever doubts what we can do, remind them of the Valoran sun." Outside, the star shone bright once more, lighting the ships with warm golden rays. It was a reminder that even in the darkest crisis, hope could be built, not found but made, by those who refused to stop. Grant turned away from the window, her face calm, her voice steady. "Prepare for next phase," she said. "We're not done. We can handle it." The Valoran sun, now temporarily stabilized, burned brighter than it had in decades. Its golden light reflected off the remaining human fleet orbiting in careful formation. And across the galaxy, countless species watched in awe. Yet the humans knew the calm was only temporary. The star's core was still unstable, and every moment was a test of endurance, skill, and courage. Captain Alyssa Grant walked across the bridge of the ISS Resolute, her boots clicking softly against the metal floor. The hum of the ship was comforting in its steadiness, yet the warning lights told a story she could not ignore. Fusion stabilizers were beginning to strain. Energy readings fluctuated sharply, and some systems threatened to overload. Commander David Ruiz stood beside her, staring at a holographic display of the star. His face was drawn, but his eyes burned with determination. "Captain, the core is spiking again. If the next series of stabilizers fail, we could see another cascade reaction." Grant's hands rested on the console, her eyes locked on the fluctuating energy flows. "We'll manage it," she said, though she felt the weight of responsibility settle deeper in her chest. "We always do." Ruiz gave a faint, weary smile. "That's what terrifies every alien watching us. They see the risk and they can't understand why we push forward." Grant chuckled softly. "Because we can. That's the only answer anyone needs. Care. The next phase." The next phase involved deploying 3 advanced fusion anchors directly into the star's upper core. It was the most dangerous part of the mission. Each ship carrying an anchor would fly closer to the sun than any spacecraft in history. Heat shields would glow white-hot, radiation fields would buffet the hull, and any error could destroy a vessel instantly. Lieutenant Mara Chen, known for her precision piloting, stepped forward. "I'll lead the first run," she said. Her face was calm, though a faint tremor betrayed her fear. "If we can place the anchors at these points, the core's instability will begin to reduce permanently." Grant nodded. "You've trained for this. Trust yourself. Trust the team." The fleet moved into formation. Their ships, though battered from previous operations, shone with unwavering focus. Drones scanned the star's surface, sending live data back to the control deck. Every second counted. Every decision mattered. Into the fire as the first ship approached the star, temperatures skyrocketed. The hull's heat shields glowed bright orange and the radiation began to warp the sensors. Mara Chen's ship danced between flares and plasma bursts, her hands steady on the controls despite the overwhelming heat. "Anchor 1, ready for deployment," she reported. Her voice was calm, steady, almost serene. "Initiating release in 3, 2, 1. The stabilizer deployed perfectly, its rods sinking deep into the sun's surface. Energy readings spiked, but in a controlled way, channeling the unstable solar energy back into the anchor. The bridge of the Resolute erupted in quiet cheers. "Good work, Lieutenant," Grant said softly. "Keep moving. We're not finished." 3. A sacrifice. It was during the second deployment that disaster struck. One of the stabilizers began to malfunction. The automated systems failed to compensate for a sudden surge of energy in the core. Alarms screamed across the fleet. If the anchor collapsed, it could trigger a chain reaction, destroying nearby ships. Commander Ruiz made a snap decision. "I'll go in manually," he said. "The automated system can't handle this, but I can." "David, no," Grant shouted. "It's too dangerous." "I have to," he replied firmly. "If the stabilizer fails, the system is lost. We don't have a choice." Ruiz piloted his ship directly into the failing stabilizer. Flames licked the edges of the hull, warning lights flashed wildly, and for a tense moment everyone held their breath. Then, with skill honed through years of experience, he rerouted all reactor energy to stabilize the anchor. The readings normalized. The star once again remained steady. The cost was clear. The valiant Ruiz's ship had sustained irreparable damage. Ruiz himself was safe for now, but the strain left him unconscious, drained completely from the effort. Grant exhaled deeply. "He saved the mission," she whispered. "Just like we knew he could." Watching humanity across the galaxy, every species observing the operation realized something extraordinary. These humans, fragile by cosmic standards, were facing an impossible challenge with calm determination and courage. They risked lives not for glory or conquest, but because it was the right thing to do. Their selflessness, their stubbornness, and their innovation defied expectations. On Valora Prime, Lyra and her friends watched the feat in awe. "Why do they keep going?" she asked. They could run. They could save themselves. Her elder brother shook his head. "Because that's what it means to be human. They don't just survive, they protect others. They don't quit halfway." News broadcasts from the Galactic Union showed interviews with scientists, engineers, and commanders. "They fight differently," one alien commentator said. "They see risk as part of the equation, but not as a reason to give up. Logic fails to explain it, but they do it anyway." Here, the breaking point. By the 5th day of this phase, the human fleet was exhausted. Systems were overloaded, energy reserves nearly depleted, and the crew was physically drained. Yet Grant refused to stop. The star demanded full attention. Every stabilizer had to be precisely deployed, every rod perfectly aligned, every fluctuation countered in real time. On the command deck, Grant's team worked with seamless coordination. Engineers recalibrated shields, officers managed energy flows, and pilots navigated through deadly flares. The star's upper core pulsed violently, testing the limits of their technology and courage. And then the next challenge appeared, a sudden solar flare larger than any observed before. It moved like a wall of fire toward the fleet. Communication lines went dead in some ships. Sensors flickered. Many observers across the galaxy gasped at the thought of human ships facing this. Grant's voice rang out. "Hold position. Compensate for flare trajectory. We can handle it." Lieutenant Chen dodged the flare, her ship weaving between blasts. Ruiz, regaining consciousness, manually adjusted his stabilizer's output. The flares collided with the anchors, but instead of destroying them, the controlled energy redirected the flare safely back into the star's outer layers. It was a perfect, almost impossible maneuver. The bridge erupted in cheers, but Grant raised her hand. "Stay focused. We're not done yet." 6. A lesson for the galaxy. By the 6th day, the Valoran sun had begun showing signs of permanent stabilization. Its violent flares reduced in frequency. Radiation levels dropped. The fleet's risk remained high, but the impossible was becoming reality. Saran, observing from Valora Prime, spoke to the Galactic Council. These humans, they are teaching us something we never learned before, that hope, courage, and determination can challenge even the power of a dying star. The Treen representative nodded reluctantly. Logic cannot measure the value of perseverance. Perhaps there is more to this species than calculation. Other species whispered to each other. The humans had not only slowed a star, they had changed the galaxy's perspective on what could be done. Fear of the impossible was beginning to fade. Humanity's resolve Captain Grant remained on the bridge, her eyes scanning the now stable sun. She knew the final phase would be even more dangerous, but her crew's courage gave her confidence. We've come this far, she said quietly. We don't stop now. Ruiz, sitting beside her, nodded. The galaxy is watching, and they will remember what we've done. Grant smiled faintly. Not for the fame, not for recognition, for life, for hope. That's why we do it. Outside the viewport, the sun glowed steadily. Human ships, battered but unwavering, circled like guardians. Every flare, every risk, every sacrifice had brought them closer to a miracle. A silent promise at the end of the day, when the fleet finally pulled to safer orbit. Captain Grant recorded her message for the Galactic Union. The sun is stabilizing. Progress is slow but steady. Many lives have been tested and some were given. Humanity will continue until the star is fully secure. We do this because it must be done. We can handle it. She paused, looking at the golden sphere outside. And we will. No matter what it takes. In distant systems, species who had doubted humans whispered the phrase over and over. They can handle it. They really can handle it. It was more than a statement. It was a lesson, a warning, and a promise. A reminder that even when the universe seemed unbeatable, a small, determined species could rise to meet it. The Valoran sun had begun to glow steadily. Its violent pulses reduced to minor ripples. From orbit, the human fleet shone like silver guardians encircling a golden treasure. Yet the most dangerous moments were still ahead. The star's inner core remained volatile, and every adjustment required precision, courage, and teamwork. Captain Alyssa Grant stood on the bridge of the ISS Resolute, her hands resting lightly on the console. The crew worked tirelessly, eyes fixed on holographic displays that mapped the energy flows of the sun. Each stabilizer, each rod, and each anchor was part of a delicate symphony. One misstep could unravel it all. Commander David Ruiz moved beside her, scanning incoming reports. The outer core has stabilized further, he said, but the inner core is unpredictable. Fluctuations are sudden and strong. Grant nodded. Then we adapt. We always do. The galaxy watches across the stars, word of human bravery had spread. Screens and communications channels in countless systems broadcasted live footage of the operation. Species that had never believed humans capable of anything extraordinary now held their breath at every maneuver. On Valora Prime, citizens gathered in public squares and viewing halls. Families watched human engineers and pilots risk their lives with calm precision. The elders whispered stories of their ancestors' heroics, comparing them to the humans' daring efforts. Lyra, the young Valoran technician, clutched her brother's hand. They are so small, and yet they are doing something no one else could even imagine. Her brother nodded. They don't see smallness. They see possibility. Across the galaxy, alien scientists and scholars studied the human operation with fascination. They don't just solve problems, they challenge the impossible, one analyst said. Every calculation predicts failure, yet they succeed anyway. The final stabilizers back in orbit, Grant and her officers prepared for the deployment of the final stabilizers. These machines were larger and more advanced than anything previously used. Each one required a pilot to guide it through the star's corona and into precise alignment within the unstable core. Lieutenant Mara Chen approached Grant. Her face was calm, her eyes focused. Captain, I'll lead the first stabilizer run, she said. The team is ready. Grant nodded. We're all ready because of you. Bring it in carefully. We can't afford mistakes. The fleet formed tight formations, ready to support the deployment. Drones scanned the star's surface, sending real-time data to every ship. Engineers calculated trajectories down to millimeters, while pilots held steady against flares and radiation bursts. Into the core Mara Chen's ship, the Silver Arrow, dove toward the sun's corona. Heat shields glowed white-hot, and the temperature warnings flashed incessantly. Outside, waves of plasma rose like walls of fire. testing the limits of human engineering. Anchor 1 ready, Chen reported. Deploying now. The stabilizer descended and sank perfectly into the star's surface. Energy readings spiked, but the anchor absorbed the unstable solar power, redirecting it safely. The core began to pulse more evenly. For a brief moment, the crew allowed themselves to hope. But the sun had one last test in store. Suddenly, a massive flare erupted from the upper layers of the corona, larger than anything previously seen. It surged directly toward the fleet, carrying enough energy to obliterate multiple ships at once. Communication lines flickered and sensors began to fail. Brace for impact, Grant shouted. All ships compensate for flare trajectory. Chen maneuvered with skill beyond imagination. Her ship weaved through the plasma like a dancer avoiding fire. Other pilots followed suit, each one keeping a perfect formation despite the deadly energy surrounding them. Humanity's determination as the flare hit. The stabilizers absorbed the energy instead of being destroyed. The surge was redirected safely into the star, further stabilizing the core. The human fleet survived, battered but intact. On the Resolute, the bridge erupted in cheers, though Grant raised her hand for silence. Good, she said. But we're not done. We must finish the deployment. Every stabilizer counts. Commander Ruiz, recovering from the previous exhaustion, adjusted the final anchor. This is it, Captain. Last stabilizer deployment. Grant nodded. Let's finish this. The final anchor descended, controlled precisely by the team. It sank into the core, locking in place. Energy readings normalized. The star, for the first time in centuries, pulsed evenly, steadily, without warning. The galaxy holds its breath from distant planets. The galaxy watched in awe. Every species, every civilization paused. Ships left their usual missions to observe the humans. Scholars, leaders, and children alike were drawn to screens and observation decks. Some whispered in disbelief. Others bowed in silent reverence. Ambassador Tisserand addressed the Galactic Council. These humans, they are teaching us a lesson we could not have learned otherwise. They show us that courage, creativity, and determination can overcome what seems impossible. Even the skeptical Treen representative remained silent, his crystalline form reflecting the golden light of the stabilized star. Logic could not explain what he had witnessed. The humans had defied every expectation, rewriting the limits of what was possible. A moment of triumph, with the final stabilizer in place, Grant allowed herself a moment to breathe. She looked at the sun through the bridge's viewport, golden and steady. The fleet, though worn and damaged, had succeeded. Humanity had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. In the fleet, Mara Chen and her fellow pilots cheered quietly. Engineers wiped sweat and soot from their faces. Even in exhaustion, a sense of pride filled the air. They had done what no one thought could be done. Grant turned to Ruiz. We've shown them what humans are capable of. He smiled faintly. Yes, and they won't forget it. Back, a symbol of hope, news of the successful operation spread faster than any data transmission. Across the galaxy, broadcasts showed the golden star and the human fleet encircling it. Children painted pictures of ships dancing through fire. Scholars analyzed the humans' methods. Leaders began to rethink what their own civilizations considered impossible. On Valora Prime, Lyra and her friends watched the feeds, their eyes wide with wonder. They did it, she whispered. They really did it, her brother smiled. And they didn't just save the star. They've changed the way the galaxy sees hope. Even species that had once doubted humans began to adopt their methods of courage and cooperation. The phrase, "we can handle it," became a mantra, repeated by millions across countless worlds. It was no longer just a saying. It was a promise. Humanity's legacy begins. Back on the Resolute, Captain Grant recorded her daily report for the Galactic Union. The star is stabilized. All stabilizers are in place and functioning within normal parameters. Progress was hard-earned, but successful. Humanity came here as strangers. We leave as allies, teachers, and friends, and we will continue to protect this system until it is completely secure. She paused, looking at the golden sphere outside. We've shown what it means to never give up. If the galaxy doubts us, let them remember this day. Outside, the sun continued to shine steadily, reflecting its golden light on the fleet. For the first time in generations, the Valoran system had peace. But more importantly, the galaxy had witnessed something far greater: the courage, ingenuity, and determination of humans. Every eye that watched knew one truth. When humans say, "We can handle it," they mean it. A silent promise that night. Captain Grant stood alone on the Resolute's observation deck, staring at the glowing star. She thought of those who had risked everything, of the lives given and of the hope now spread across countless worlds. She whispered softly to herself, "We can handle it, and we will continue to do so." Across the galaxy, aliens spoke the words in awe. "They can handle it," they repeated. "They truly can handle it." And slowly, as countless worlds absorbed the lesson, a quiet truth spread. Courage, ingenuity, and determination could shine brighter than the stars themselves. Humanity had not only saved the Velaran sun, they had inspired the galaxy to believe in the impossible.